Let's get on with the full play-by-play of AEW. But before we do, let's just give some overall thoughts, because Luke has put me in this terrible position. Well, I really enjoyed the show. I thought this was a great episode of AEW Dynamite, but by its own standards, a great episode is just a normal episode for AEW. Like, think about last week, the FTR debut, the Jericho-Tyson angle, all the matches that happened on it. It was a fantastic show. So I thought by the end of this was a high 3 out of 5. And then my review goes up and Luke sends me the message of what we're going to call today's video, best episode of AEW so far. And I thought, God damn it, Luke, you're going to make me look like I've hated the episode because I didn't think it was the best episode ever. It's Kong Skull Island all over again.
I'm going to preface this by saying you're okay, man, because not a flawless episode of Dynamite. We just talked about the Brody Lee thing then. Still no direction for Hikaru Shida, despite the fact that she won the AEW Women's Championship in an excellent match with Nyla Rose. So far, far, far from a perfect show. But this was the best show of 2020. And I'll tell you for why. My friends, Tom, and his wife they've had a baby recently. Very, very lovely news. So, obviously enormously happy for those. But Tom is a guy that I brought up a couple of times as someone who has said, I'm looking to get back into wrestling. I'd be quite interested in checking it out again. I've said to him, there've been times where I've been watching AEW where I've been thinking like, this is the show I'm going to recommend him that he starts off from. And then there'll be something like the Matt Hardy Damascus stuff or like beating down Vanguard one. I'm like, this works if you're already in this world. But if you're a newcomer to it, it might be one step removed from being like, I'm actually going to get into this world now. This episode wasn't, though. After each segment, I was like, this is the episode to recommend. Another segment goes by. It's still the episode to recommend. Another episode. This is definitely the episode to recommend. This episode was firing on all cylinders and was consistently great throughout. Yep, a lot of recap packages. Completely understand that. But for a new viewer coming in, I think this might be the best episode of AEW. This felt like it wasn't a reset show. But if you came into this episode having not seen last week's episode or even not seen Double or Nothing, you could get everything that you need to know into heading into Fyter Fest. And that's good. And it did a lot to get you excited about Fyter Fest as well. So you're watching this with a fresh pair of eyes. You're seeing loads of cool characters. You're seeing these debuting characters give amazing promos. You're finding out about these feuds. You're finding about who's where and who's doing what, storylines that are being teased for down the line. And that's why I think this is the most consistently best episode of AEW Dynamite. Also, it had that Britt Baker segment, which was absolutely fabulous.
Well, look out for best episode of AEW Dynamite so far on WrestleTalk Clips tomorrow.
There you go.
It really was. I do agree with everything you've said. I just think that, our criteria differs a little bit from what would constitute a 5 out of 5 show. I think stuff needs to have like 2 to 3 amazing standout moments or like one all-time memorable great moment. For me, last week had those aplenty. And there's been plenty of other AEW episodes this year that I would also put in that bracket. This to me was a very, very solid episode.
And you're absolutely not wrong on that, because there's quite a few that you could point to. The one with the Cody Wardlow cage match was an absolutely banging episode of Dynamite. The Pac Omega Iron Man match, banging episode of Dynamite. Like, there have been, even like Phoenix versus Nick Jackson, like there have been better wrestling throughout. And I absolutely will not say that this was, the most best show for in-ring wrestling. Absolutely not. But I just think from a sort of consistency standpoint, and like and then maybe that's it. I'm coming in from a different criteria of just like, if I was to show an episode of Dynamite to a new viewer, this is the episode I would pick. I just thought that, like, it just did its job absolutely brilliantly. So Tony Khan, I'll expect that, my check as usual, and for the comments to flood in with my bias.
maybe that's it. Maybe you went in with the mindset of my mate wants a new wrestling product to get into. I'm looking out for that. Whereas I went in with the thrills and highs of last week's episode. And I'm not saying it was, this episode delivered exactly what it was supposed to. So a big tick. But after a recap of last week's episode, whereas, look at some of these things that happened. FTR debuting, Cody's Open Challenge announcement, Jungle Boy winning the Battle Royal, Mox and Cage having that first confrontation, Tyson and Jericho. I was like, damn, that was a big episode last week.
It was a packed show. It was a really packed show last week.